Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the loading bay of his cargo ship. The Aurora's Dawn was not the biggest ship in space, but it was his ship. He had worked for 15 years to buy it from the bank on Mars. Every bolt and wire in the ship meant something to him. The Zephyrian homeworld looked strange through the ship's windows. The sky was purple and 2 moons hung in the air like giant rocks. Jake had been to many worlds, but this one made him feel uneasy. The Zephyrians were tall lizard people with sharp teeth and cold eyes. They did not like humans very much. Jake's wife Marie had told him to be extra careful on this trip. She knew the Zephyrians were not friendly to humans, but this job paid well and they needed the money. Their son Bobby was starting college next year, and their daughter Lucy needed new shoes again. Kids grew so fast. The communicator on Jake's belt made a soft sound. He pressed the button and heard the voice of his second officer, Pete Walker. "Captain, the Zephyrian officials are here to check our cargo. They want to meet with you right away." Jake sighed. He had done this inspection process 100 times before with other alien races. Usually it was boring but simple. "Show them." The cargo, sign some papers, pay the fees, and then go home. But the Zephyrians were different. They had rules about everything, and they got angry very easily. Jake walked to the main cargo hold where 3 Zephyrian officials waited for him. They wore long purple robes and had golden symbols on their chests. The tallest one had scars on his face and looked very important. Jake could see that this one was the leader. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the merchant ship Aurora's Dawn," Jake said, trying to sound polite. "Welcome aboard my ship." The tall Zephyrian did not smile. He looked at Jake like he was looking at a bug. "I am High Executor Vorthak. We are here to inspect your cargo for illegal items." Jake nodded. "Of course. Everything is legal and properly documented. My cargo officer will show you everything you need to see." But as Jake spoke, something went wrong with his translator device. The small box on his belt that changed his words into Zephyrian language started making strange noises. Jake hit it with his hand, trying to make it work properly. "Stupid machine," Jake said under his breath, but the translator was still working, just badly. Instead of translating Jake's words correctly, it changed them into something very different. In the Zephyrian language, what came out sounded like the worst insult possible. It was like calling someone's mother a coward and their father a thief at the same time. The 3 Zephyrian officials stepped back as if Jake had hit them. High Executor Vorthak's eyes became very wide and his hand moved to the long knife on his belt. "What did you just say to us?" Vorthak asked, his voice full of anger. Jake did not understand what was happening. He looked at his translator and saw that the red light was blinking. This meant the machine was not working right. "I'm sorry, there seems to be a problem with my translator," Jake said quickly. "I didn't mean to say anything wrong. Can we start over?" But the translator was still broken. Jake's apology came out as even worse insults in the Zephyrian language. To the officials, it sounded like Jake was laughing at them and calling them cowards. High Executor Vorthak's face became dark with rage. In Zephyrian culture, such insults could only be answered with blood. It was their most ancient law. To let such words go unpunished would bring shame to their entire family line. "You dare to insult us in our own language?" Vorthak shouted. "You call us cowards and laugh at our honor?" Jake realized something was very wrong. He could see the anger in their eyes, but he did not understand why. He tried to explain again. "Please, I think there's been a mistake. My translator is broken. I would never insult you or your people. I respect your culture and your laws." But, again, the broken translator turned his words into terrible insults. To the Zephyrians, it sounded like Jake was making fun of their laws and calling their culture stupid. The other 2 officials moved away from Vorthak, giving him space. They knew what was about to happen. In their culture, such insults demanded immediate justice. There was no court, no trial, no second chances. Jake saw Vorthak pull out his ceremonial blade. It was a long curved knife with strange symbols carved into the metal. Jake finally understood that he was in serious danger. "Wait, please listen to me," Jake said, holding up his hands. "This is all a misunderstanding. I have a wife and 2 children back on Earth. I don't want any trouble with your people." But the translator kept making everything worse. Each word Jake spoke came out as a new insult. He was trapped by his own broken machine. High Executor Vorthak stepped forward, his blade shining in the ship's lights. You have brought shame upon yourself and dishonor to your species. According to the ancient laws of my people, such insults can only be washed clean with blood. Jake tried to run, but the cargo hold was small and the Zephyrians were fast. Vorthak caught him near the back wall. Jake looked into the alien's cold eyes and saw no mercy there. Please, Jake whispered. Tell my family I love them. The blade went deep into Jake's chest. He felt the cold metal pierce his heart, and then everything went dark. Jake Morrison died on the floor of his own ship, killed by words he never meant to say. The three Zephyrian officials stood over Jake's body for a moment. To them, justice had been served. Their honor had been restored. They did not feel sad or guilty. In their culture, Jake had brought this punishment on himself. High Executor Vorthak cleaned his blade on Jake's shirt and put it back in its sheath. He looked at the other two officials. Prepare the official report, he said. The human Morrison violated sacred protocol by insulting our honor and our people repeatedly. Justice was served according to our ancient laws. The matter is now closed. The officials left Jake's ship without looking back. They sent a message to their government explaining what had happened. They also sent a message to Earth's diplomatic corps, telling them that a human traitor had been executed for breaking Zephyrian law. Pete Walker found Jake's body an hour later. He had been waiting for the captain to return, but when Jake did not answer his communicator, Pete went looking for him. The sight of his captain lying in a pool of blood made Pete sick to his stomach. Pete called the Earth Embassy right away. He also called Jake's wife Marie on Earth. It was the hardest thing Pete had ever had to do. He had to tell a woman that her husband was dead, killed by aliens over a translator error. The news reached Earth's government within 6 hours. Ambassador Lisa Carter read the official Zephyrian statement with growing anger. According to the report, Jake Morrison had repeatedly insulted Zephyrian officials and refused to apologize. The execution was legal under Zephyrian law, but Pete Walker told a different story. He said the captain's translator had broken, and Jake had been trying to apologize when they killed him. The Zephyrians had murdered an innocent man over a machine error. Ambassador Carter sent an urgent message to Earth's president. The message was short but clear. They killed one of ours for no good reason. The Zephyrians think the matter is closed. They're wrong. President Helen Rodriguez sat in the Oval Office at 3 a.m, reading the report for the 5th time. The words did not change, but each time she read them, her anger grew stronger. Jake Morrison was dead, killed by aliens who thought his life meant nothing. The president's chief of staff, Danny Cooper, stood near the window looking out at the dark Washington streets. He had worked with 3 different presidents, but he had never seen one this angry before. They killed him over broken words, President Rodriguez said quietly. A translator failed, and they murdered a man who was trying to apologize. Danny turned away from the window. The Zephyrian ambassador says it was legal under their law. They claim Morrison insulted their officials on purpose. Their law. The president's voice was cold as ice. What about our law? What about human law? Jake Morrison was an American citizen. He was under our protection. The president pressed a button on her desk. Within minutes, the most powerful people in the American government began arriving at the White House. Defense Secretary Frank Williams came first, still wearing his pajamas under a hastily put-on coat. Admiral Patricia Hayes arrived next, her uniform perfect even at this early hour. Secretary of State Karen Bell was the last to arrive. She looked tired and worried. She had been on the phone with alien diplomats all night, trying to understand what had happened. Tell me about Jake Morrison, President Rodriguez said to the room. Admiral Hayes opened a file folder. Jake Morrison, age 42, married to Marie Morrison for 18 years. 2 children, Bobby, age 17, and Lucy, aged 14. He served in the Mars Colony Guard for 6 years before becoming a merchant trader. Clean record, no criminal history, respected by his crew. He sounds like a good man, the president said. He was, Admiral Hayes replied. His crew loved him. His family adored him. He worked hard to support them and never asked for anything from anybody. Defense Secretary Williams leaned forward in his chair. Madam President, we need to respond to this. We cannot let aliens kill our people and walk away. Secretary Bell shook her head. Frank, we need to be careful here. The Zephyrians are members of the Galactic Federation. If we attack them, we could start a war with dozens of alien species. Good, Williams said, his voice hard. Maybe it's time these aliens learned to respect human life. President Rodriguez stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the first light of dawn beginning to appear in the eastern sky. Somewhere out there, Marie Morrison was waking up as a widow. Her children were waking up without a father. Get me a direct line to Marie Morrison, the president said. I want to speak with her personally. Danny Cooper made the call. Within 10 minutes, the president was speaking with Jake's widow. Marie Morrison's voice was broken with grief, but she was still strong. Mrs. Morrison, I want you to know that your husband's death will not be ignored, the president said. Jake was a good man who died for no reason. We will not let this stand. Thank you, Madam President, Marie replied through her tears. Jake always said that being human meant looking out for each other. He would want justice not just for him, but for any human who might face this in the future. After the call ended, President Rodriguez turned to her advisors. Her face was set like stone. I want Jake Morrison's story on every news channel in America by noon today. I want the world to know who he was and how he died. And I want every human in the galaxy to understand that an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. Within hours, Jake Morrison's face was everywhere. The news channels told his story over and over. They showed pictures of him with his family, videos of him working on his ship, interviews with people who knew him. America learned about the man who had died alone among the stars. The reaction was immediate and powerful. Angry crowds gathered outside the Zephyrian embassy in Washington. People carried signs with Jake's picture and demanded justice. Similar protests began in every major city across America and then spread around the world. But the anger was not just in the streets. In the halls of Congress, senators and representatives from both parties stood together for the first time in years. They passed a resolution declaring that Jake Morrison's death was an act of murder, not justice. Senator Richard Stone of Texas spoke for many when he addressed the Senate. Jake Morrison was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was a working man trying to provide for his family. His death shows us that no human is safe in this galaxy as long as aliens think they can kill us without consequences. The anger spread beyond Earth. On Mars, the colonial government declared 3 days of mourning for Jake Morrison. The asteroid mining station stopped work for 24 hours in his honor. Even humans living on alien worlds held memorial services. Admiral Hayes called an emergency meeting of all Earth's military leaders. The meeting was held in the Pentagon's most secure conference room. Around the table sat generals, admirals, and intelligence chiefs who had spent their careers preparing for war. The President has given us new orders, Admiral Hayes said. We are to prepare for the possibility of military action against the Zephyrian Empire. General Paul Adams, head of the Army, frowned. Patricia, our military is designed for defense, not conquest. We have maybe 200 ships that could fight in space, and most of those are patrol boats. That was yesterday's military, Admiral Hayes replied. Starting today, we are going to build a new one. The meeting lasted 12 hours. By the end, Earth's entire defense strategy had changed. Instead of a small force designed to protect the home system, they would build a military capable of projecting power across the galaxy. President Rodriguez appeared on television that evening to address the nation. She stood behind the presidential podium with Jake Morrison's picture displayed on a screen beside her. My fellow Americans and all humans everywhere, she began. 3 days ago, one of our own was murdered by aliens who thought his life had no value. Jake Morrison died because a machine broke down, and instead of showing mercy, these aliens chose violence. The president paused, looking directly into the camera. Some people will say we should accept this. They will say that Jake Morrison's death was unfortunate, but that we must respect alien laws and customs. I say no. I say that human life is precious and we will not allow it to be taken lightly. She continued. Starting tomorrow, America will begin the largest military buildup in our history. We will build ships, weapons, and technologies that will ensure no human ever dies alone and forgotten among the stars again. The president's speech was broadcast to every human settlement in the galaxy. On space stations, mining colonies, and research outposts, humans gathered around screens to hear their leader's words. The effect was electric. Within days, applications to join Earth's military increased by 500%. Factories that had been building civilian goods began retooling for military production. Scientists who had been working on peaceful projects volunteered to develop weapons. Dr. Amanda Foster was one of those scientists. She had spent her career studying alien cultures, trying to help humans understand their galactic neighbors. But Jake Morrison's death changed everything for her. I've spent 20 years learning how aliens think, she told her research team. Now I'm going to use that knowledge to help us fight them. Meanwhile, the galaxy watched Earth's reaction with a mixture of amusement and concern. The Altarian Council representative gave a speech mocking humanity's childish tantrum over one insignificant death. The Centauri Trade Union announced they were suspending all contracts with human companies, claiming that Earth was too emotionally unstable to be trusted with important business. But a few alien species were not amused. The Andromedan Republic had fought humans in a small border conflict 5 years earlier. They remembered how fiercely humans fought when they were angry. The Andromedan military began quietly moving ships away from human space. Back on Earth, Marie Morrison stood at her husband's memorial service. Thousands of people came to honor a man most of them had never met. She spoke to the crowd about her husband, telling them about his dreams and his love for his family. Jake believed that humans were special, she said. Not because we were stronger or smarter than other species, but because we cared about each other. He died alone, but he will not be forgotten, and his death will mean something. As Marie spoke, construction crews across Earth were already breaking ground for new shipyards. The largest military-industrial project in human history was beginning. Jake Morrison's death had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping since they reached for the stars. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had killed a human and expected his people to simply accept it. Instead, they had turned all of humanity into their enemy. The species that had been dismissed as primitive and emotional was about to show the galaxy what human emotions could accomplish when focused on a single goal. War was coming, and it would be unlike anything the Dai galaxy had ever seen. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison died on his cargo ship. The galaxy had moved on, as it always did. Trade ships traveled their normal routes between the stars. Alien diplomats made their usual deals and agreements. The Zephyrian Empire had even expanded into 3 new star systems, taking them from weaker species who could not fight back. Most aliens had forgotten about the dead human traitor. They remembered Earth's angry reaction, but they thought it was just noise. Humans were emotional creatures who got upset easily, but they always calmed down eventually. At least that was what the aliens believed. They were very wrong. On Earth, everything had changed. The planet that had once been focused on peaceful trade and exploration was now the center of the largest military project in human history. Every major city had new factories working day and night. The sound of construction never stopped. Chief Engineer Robert Chen stood on a platform overlooking the main assembly floor of the Denver military complex. Below him, thousands of workers were building humanity's new space fleet. The sight still amazed him, even after months of watching it grow. "How many ships do we have ready?" asked Colonel Nancy Brooks, the military liaison assigned to the project. Robert checked his tablet computer. 200 destroyers, 50 cruisers, and 12 dreadnought-class battleships. We're completing 4 new ships every day now. Colonel Brooks whistled softly. 4 ships a day. 6 months ago, Earth was building maybe 1 ship per month, and those were cargo haulers. Jake Morrison changed everything, Robert said quietly. His death gave us a purpose we never had before. The ships being built were unlike anything Earth had ever created. They were not designed for exploration or peaceful missions. These were weapons of war, built by people who understood that sometimes violence was the only language others would understand. Dr. Amanda Foster walked through the research labs at the Colorado Springs facility. Around her, hundreds of scientists worked on projects that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Weapons that could destroy entire space stations, armor that could stop the most powerful alien guns, communication systems that would let human fleets coordinate across vast distances. "How is the AI project coming along?" Amanda asked Dr. Kevin Torres, her deputy director. Kevin pulled up a holographic display showing complex computer code. "The battle management system is ready for testing. It can process tactical information and make decisions faster than any human or alien commander." Amanda nodded. She had studied alien military tactics for years, and she knew their weakness. Every alien species fought according to ancient traditions and honor codes. They were predictable because they never changed their methods. Humans would be different. Human military doctrine was built on one simple idea: win at any cost. Honor was fine for parades and ceremonies, but in battle, only victory mattered. "What about the new weapons?" Amanda asked. Kevin led her to another section of the lab where weapons specialists were testing their latest creations. "The plasma torpedo system is ready. It can punch through any known alien shield. The particle beam cannons are 3 times more powerful than anything the Zephyrians have." Amanda watched as technicians fired test shots at target drones. The weapons performed perfectly, destroying their targets with frightening efficiency. She thought about Jake Morrison and wondered what he would think of all this preparation being done in his name. Meanwhile, at the Luna shipyards orbiting Earth's moon, Admiral Patricia Hayes inspected the newest addition to humanity's fleet. The UES Retribution was the largest warship humans had ever built. It was 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level a small moon. "She's beautiful," said Captain Ryan Adams, who would command the massive ship. Admiral Hayes nodded. "Jake Morrison died alone on a small cargo ship. No human will ever die alone again, not while ships like this exist to protect them." The Retribution was more than just a battleship. It was a symbol of humanity's new place in the galaxy. The species that had been ignored and dismissed was now building a military force that would demand respect. Captain Adams had been chosen for a special mission. He would command the diplomatic fleet that would deliver humanity's final ultimatum to the Zephyrian Empire. It was humanity's last attempt at a peaceful solution. "Do you think they'll accept our demands?" Captain Adams asked the Admiral. Admiral Hayes looked out at the stars through the ship's observation deck. "The Zephyrians are proud and stubborn. They think they did nothing wrong when they killed Jake Morrison. They probably think we're bluffing." "Are we bluffing?" Admiral Hayes turned to face the younger officer. Her eyes were hard as steel. "Captain, we have built the most powerful military force in galactic history. We did it in 6 months, working, day and night, because one good man died for no reason. Does that sound like bluffing to you?" Captain Adams understood. Humanity was not bluffing. They were deadly serious. While Earth prepared for war, the rest of the galaxy continued to underestimate the human threat. The Altarian Council published a report calling Earth's military buildup an expensive joke. They claimed human technology was still decades behind alien science. The Centauri Trade Union went further, imposing economic sanctions on Earth. They stopped buying human goods and told other species to do the same. They wanted to punish humanity for what they called aggressive behavior. But some aliens were more careful. The Andromedan Republic quietly began moving their military forces away from human space. They remembered fighting humans before and did not want to do it again. On the Zephyrian homeworld, High Executor Vorthak received reports about Earth's military preparations. He read them with amusement, not concern. "Let the emotional humans build their toys," he told his advisors. "We have been warriors for 10,000 years. Our ancestors conquered half the galaxy when these humans were still living in caves." Vorthak's chief military advisor, General Kethvar, was not so confident. "My lord, our spies report that human weapons are more advanced than we expected. Perhaps we should consider their demands for an apology. Vorthak's eyes flashed with anger. Apologize? For enforcing our sacred laws? The human Morrison insulted our honor. He paid the price that our culture demands. The matter is closed. But the matter was not closed. On Earth, President Rodriguez was meeting with her military commanders to finalize their plans. The conference room in the Pentagon was filled with the most experienced warriors humanity had ever produced. Operation Righteous Fury is ready to begin, Admiral Hayes reported. We have 17 battle fleets positioned throughout the galaxy. Each fleet is commanded by officers who understand what we're fighting for. General Paul Adams, the Army Chief of Staff, displayed a holographic map of Zephyrian space. We've identified 43 key military targets. If we hit them all simultaneously, their ability to resist will be eliminated within hours. Defense Secretary Frank Williams leaned back in his chair. 6 months ago, we could barely defend our own solar system. Now we're planning to attack an empire that spans dozens of star systems. Jake Morrison's death gave us focus, President Rodriguez said. Every human in the galaxy understands what's at stake. We're not just fighting for revenge. We're fighting to ensure that no human ever dies alone and forgotten again. The president looked around the table at her advisors. Captain Adams will deliver our final ultimatum to the Zephyrians tomorrow. They have one last chance to admit they were wrong and make things right. And if they refuse? General Adams asked. Then we show them what happens when you take a human life, the president replied. The next day, Captain Adams took his diplomatic fleet to the Zephyrian homeworld. His ships were sleek and powerful, demonstrating humanity's new military capabilities. But his mission was still peaceful. He would give the Zephyrians one final opportunity to avoid war. The Zephyrian High Council met in their great chamber to hear the human demands. Captain Adams stood before them, representing all of humanity. His words were clear and simple. The human Jake Morrison was murdered by your people 6 months ago. He died because of a translator malfunction, not because he intended any insult. We demand that you acknowledge this injustice and make reparations to his family. High Executor. Vorthak listened to the translation with growing anger. You dare come to our world and make demands? Morrison violated our sacred protocols. Justice was served according to our ancient laws. Captain Adams had expected this response. He had studied Zephyrian culture and knew they would never admit fault. But he had to try, for Jake Morrison's sake. This is your final chance, Adams said calmly. Acknowledge that Jake Morrison's death was wrong and we can avoid further bloodshed. The Zephyrian Council erupted in laughter. To them, the idea that humans could threaten their ancient empire was ridiculous. They had been conquering weaker species for millennia. High Executor Vorthak stood from his throne, his ceremonial blade gleaming at his side. Captain Adams, your species amuses us with your emotional outbursts. But we are not children to be frightened by your threats. The human Morrison is dead, and he deserved his fate. Leave our space before we decide to teach you proper respect. Captain. Adams nodded slowly. He had hoped for a different answer, but he was not surprised. He activated the quantum communicator on his wrist, sending a coded message back to Earth. The attack began at exactly 0800 Earth Standard Time. Across 17 different star systems, human warships appeared from the darkness of space like ghosts becoming real. They had been waiting, invisible and silent, using advanced stealth technology that made them impossible to detect. Admiral Patricia Hayes watched from the bridge of the UES Retribution as her fleet moved into position around the Zephyrian capital world. The planet below was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, but she felt no sympathy for its people. They had killed Jake Morrison and laughed about it. All fleets report ready, Admiral, said Commander Lisa Park, the fleet communications officer. Admiral Hayes nodded. Send the message to all ships. Today we fight for Jake Morrison. Today we show the galaxy that human life has value. The message went out to every human ship in the attack fleet. On hundreds of bridges, thousands of human officers and crew members heard the same words. They all knew why they were there. A good man had died and his death would not be forgotten. Captain Nicole Turner commanded the destroyer UES Justice in the Korath Prime system. She watched as the Zephyrian defense fleet scrambled to respond to the sudden appearance of human ships. The aliens moved slowly, following their ancient battle traditions. "Enemy fleet is forming traditional battle formation," reported Lieutenant Tom Baker from the weapons station. Captain Turner smiled coldly. "They're still following their old playbook. Target their command ship and prepare to fire." The Zephyrian Admiral Zethkar broadcast a message on all frequencies. "Unknown human vessels, you have violated Zephyrian space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Captain Turner opened a channel to respond. "Admiral Zethkar, I am Captain Nicole Turner of the Earth Defense Forces. 6 months ago, your people murdered Jake Morrison, an innocent human traitor. Today, you face the consequences." Admiral Zethkar's reptilian face appeared on the main screen. He looked confident and arrogant. "One human death means nothing. Your inferior species should learn its place in the galaxy." "You're about to learn our place," Captain Turner replied. She cut the communication and turned to her weapons officer. "Fire all missiles." The UES Justice launched 40 plasma torpedoes at once. The other human ships in the fleet did the same. Hundreds of advanced missiles streaked through space toward the Zephyrian defense fleet. The Zephyrians had never seen weapons like these. Their shields, which could stop traditional alien weapons, were useless against human plasma technology. The first wave of missiles tore through the enemy formation like paper. Admiral Zethkar watched in horror as half his fleet was destroyed in the first attack. "Impossible," he whispered. "How do they have such powerful weapons?" The answer was simple. Humans had spent 6 months building weapons designed for one purpose: to kill Zephyrians. Every missile, every energy beam, every piece of technology had been created with this specific enemy in mind. Captain Turner's ship moved through the debris of destroyed Zephyrian vessels. "Target the remaining ships, no survivors." Lieutenant Baker looked up from his station. "Captain, they're trying to surrender." "Did they let Jake Morrison surrender?" Captain Turner asked coldly. "Continue firing." The battle for Korath Prime lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, the Zephyrian defense fleet no longer existed. Captain Turner opened a channel to broadcast to the planet below. "This is Captain Nicole Turner of the Earth Defense Forces. Your military has been destroyed. This is what happens when you kill humans. This is for Jake Morrison." Similar scenes played out across 17 different star systems. Human fleets appeared without warning and destroyed Zephyrian forces with devastating efficiency. The aliens had never experienced warfare like this. On the Zephyrian homeworld, High Executive Vorthak received reports from his military commanders. Each report was worse than the last. System after system fell to human attack. Millions of his warriors were dead or missing. "How is this possible?" Vorthak demanded. "The humans were weak. They had no real military 6 months ago." General Kethvar looked at the data with growing fear. "My lord, they built an entire war machine in 6 months. Their technology is more advanced than anything we've seen. They fight without honor or mercy." "Without honor?" Vorthak was outraged. "We are the ones with honor. We follow the ancient ways." "The ancient ways are not working," General Kethvar replied quietly. "Our fleets are being destroyed. Our colonies are under attack. We must consider surrender." Vorthak struck his general across the face. "Never. We are Zephyrians. We do not surrender to inferior species." But the humans were proving they were not inferior. Admiral Hayes commanded the attack on the Zephyrian homeworld's orbital defenses. The massive space stations that protected the planet had been built over centuries and were considered impossible to destroy. The human fleet proved that impossible was just another word. "Target the main defense platform," Admiral Hayes ordered. "Full power to all weapons." The UES Retribution fired its main guns at the Zephyrian space station. The beams of pure energy cut through the station's armor like it was made of paper. Secondary explosions rippled through the structure as power systems overloaded. "Station Alpha is destroyed," reported the tactical officer. "Move to Station Beta," Admiral Hayes said calmly. She felt no excitement or joy in the destruction. This was not about revenge. This was about making sure no other human would die like Jake Morrison. One by one, the orbital defense platforms fell to human attack. The Zephyrians fought bravely, but they were using weapons and tactics that were thousands of years old. Humans fought with technology that was 6 months old and designed specifically to kill Zephyrians. On the planet's surface, Zephyrian civilians watched the battle in the sky above their world. They saw their mighty defenses crumble like sand castles. Many began to understand that their empire's days of conquering weaker species were over. Captain Ryan Adams led the ground assault team that captured the Zephyrian capital city. His soldiers moved through the streets with precision and purpose. They were not there to hurt civilians, but to capture the leaders who had killed Jake Morrison. Secure the government building, Captain Adams ordered his troops. Find High Executor, Vorthak. The Zephyrian palace guard tried to resist, but human soldiers had better armor, better weapons, and better training. The battle for the palace lasted 2 hours. When it was over, Captain Adams stood in the throne room where Zephyrian emperors had ruled for thousands of years. High Executor Vorthak was brought before him in chains. The proud alien leader who had killed Jake Morrison now looked small and defeated. "Do you remember Jake Morrison?" Captain Adams asked. Vorthak glared at the human officer. "One insignificant traitor. You destroyed an empire over one worthless life." Captain Adams stepped closer to the chained Zephyrian. That worthless life belonged to a husband and father. He had dreams and hopes and people who loved him. Your people took all of that away because of a translator error. He insulted our honor, Vorthak insisted. Your honor? Captain Adams laughed without humor. Your honor killed an innocent man. Today, human justice answered for that crime. Around the galaxy, other species watched the destruction of the Zephyrian Empire with growing fear. The humans had moved with speed and violence that no one had expected. In 6 months, they had built a military force capable of crushing one of the galaxy's oldest empires. The Altarian Council held an emergency session. The same representatives who had mocked Earth's grief 6 months ago now spoke in frightened whispers. The humans destroyed 43 Zephyrian systems in 1 day, reported the intelligence minister. Their fleet coordination was perfect. They knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. The Altarian High Chancellor, who had called Jake Morrison's death insignificant, now faced a terrible truth. How many human ships do our scouts report? Over 2,000 combat vessels, sir, all of them more advanced than anything in our own fleet. The Centauri Trade Union also held emergency meetings. They had imposed economic sanctions on Earth, thinking they could punish humanity for being too emotional. Now they faced the possibility that the humans might impose sanctions of their own, with plasma torpedoes. "We need to contact Earth immediately," said Trade Minister Veltar. "We must apologize for our previous statements and seek peaceful relations." But Earth was not interested in apologies from species who had laughed at Jake Morrison's death. The message from President Rodriguez was clear and simple. You had your chance to do the right thing. You chose to mock us instead. Back on the Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Hayes stood in the ruins of the Planetary Defense Center. The Zephyrian military had been completely destroyed. Their empire, which had conquered dozens of species over thousands of years, no longer existed. "Casualty report," Admiral Hayes requested. 17 human wounded, none killed, reported her aide. Estimated Zephyrian military casualties exceed 800,000. Admiral Hayes nodded. The numbers told the story of the battle. Human forces had been so superior that they had suffered almost no losses while destroying an entire empire's military. "Open a channel to Earth," Admiral Hayes ordered. "Inform the President that Operation Righteous Fury has been completed successfully. The Zephyrian Empire has surrendered unconditionally." 3 weeks after the destruction of the Zephyrian Empire, the galaxy was a very different place. Species that had ruled star systems for thousands of years now lived in fear of humanity. Trade routes that had operated the same way for centuries suddenly changed direction, all leading toward Earth. President Helen Rodriguez stood in the United Nations building in New York. preparing to address not just humanity, but every intelligent species in the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of alien governments had traveled to Earth, something that would have been unthinkable just months before. The president looked out at the assembled crowd. In the front row sat the former enemies who had mocked Jake Morrison's death. The Altarian ambassador who had called it an insignificant loss now waited nervously for her words. The Centauri trade minister, who had imposed sanctions on Earth, fidgeted in his seat like a scared child. 6 months ago, Jake Morrison died alone on his cargo ship, President Rodriguez began. He was killed by people who thought his life meant nothing. Today the entire galaxy knows his name. The president gestured to a large screen that showed Jake's picture. It was the same photo his family had provided for his memorial service. A smiling man in his work clothes standing next to his beloved ship. Jake Morrison was not a soldier or a politician. He was a husband, a father, and a working man trying to provide for his family. His death taught us that in this galaxy, being human was not enough to keep you safe. President Rodriguez paused, letting her words sink in. The alien representatives in the audience shifted uncomfortably. They all remembered their reactions to Jake's death, and none of them were proud of what they had said. But Jake's death also taught us something else. It taught us that when you hurt one human, you face all of humanity. When you kill one of us, you declare war on all of us. The president's voice grew stronger. The Zephyrian Empire learned this lesson. They are gone now. Their military destroyed, their leaders in prison. They thought they could murder Jake Morrison and walk away. They were wrong. In the audience, Ambassador Kektal of the Andromedan Republic felt sweat forming on his scaled forehead. His government had been one of the few to stay neutral during the human-Zephyrian conflict, but they had not defended Jake Morrison either. President Rodriguez continued her speech. From this day forward, the galaxy will operate under new rules. Human life is precious and will be protected. Any species that harms a human citizen will face the full might of Earth's military. She looked directly at the alien ambassadors. Some of you called us emotional and unstable when we grieved for Jake Morrison. You were right about one thing. We are emotional. But you learned that human emotions can move mountains, build fleets, and destroy empires. The president activated a holographic display showing the current positions of human military forces. Red dots appeared throughout the galaxy, marking the locations of Earth's battle fleets. Earth now maintains permanent military bases in 47 star systems, she announced. These bases ensure that no human will ever die alone and forgotten again. They also ensure that the galaxy remembers the lesson of Jake Morrison. On the former Zephyrian homeworld, now under human occupation, Admiral Patricia Hayes worked to establish the new order. The planet's government buildings had been converted into human military headquarters. The throne room where Zephyrian emperors had ruled for millennia now served as Admiral Hayes's office. Colonel Nancy Brooks entered the office carrying a data pad with the daily reports. Admiral, we've received surrender requests from 6 more Zephyrian colony worlds. They want to join the human protectorate. Admiral Hayes looked up from her work. What about their populations? How are they adjusting to human rule? Better than expected, Colonel Brooks replied. Most of them seem relieved that the war is over. The younger Zephyrians especially seem to appreciate our more flexible laws. Admiral Hayes nodded. The Zephyrian Empire had been built on rigid traditions and harsh punishments. Human administration was proving to be more fair and reasonable, even to former enemies. Any word from the trial? Admiral Hayes asked. Colonel Brooks checked her datapad. Hi. Executor Vorthak and his accomplices have been found guilty of murder. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The trial of Jake Morrison's killers had been broadcast throughout the galaxy. Human courts had proven that Vorthak knew Jake's translator was malfunctioning, but chose to kill him anyway. The evidence was overwhelming, and the verdict was unanimous. Meanwhile, on Earth, Marie Morrison sat in her living room watching the news coverage. Her children, Bobby and Lucy, sat beside her on the couch. The past 6 months had been the hardest of their lives, but they had found strength in seeing how much their father's death meant to people everywhere. Mom, Do you think Dad would be proud of what happened? Lucy asked. She was 15 now, older than her years after losing her father. Marie put her arm around her daughter. Your father believed that people should look out for each other. He always said that being human meant caring about others, even strangers. I think he would be proud that his death brought all of humanity together. Bobby, who was now 18 and preparing for college, looked at his mother. I've been thinking about joining the Earth Defense Forces. I want to make sure what happened to Dad never happens to anyone else. Marie felt her heart break a little, but she understood. Your father would want you to follow your own path. Whatever you choose, he would be proud of you. On the television, the news was showing footage of alien delegations arriving on Earth to sign new treaties. Species that had never respected humanity were now eager to form alliances and trade agreements. The Altarian Council had been the first to request a formal apology meeting. Ambassador Veltara stood before President Rodriguez in the Oval Office, her usual arrogance replaced by obvious fear. Madam President, the Altarian Council deeply regrets our previous statements regarding the death of Jake Morrison. We now understand that we were insensitive and wrong. President Rodriguez looked at the alien ambassador with cold eyes. Ambassador, 6 months ago you called Jake Morrison's death insignificant. You mocked our grief and called our reaction a childish tantrum. Ambassador Veltara winced. We did not understand human culture at the time. You understood perfectly, the president replied. You simply thought we were too weak to do anything about it. You were wrong. The president leaned forward in her chair. Altaria will pay reparations to Jake Morrison's family. You will also fund a memorial scholarship in his name. And you will never again call any human life insignificant. Ambassador Veltara nodded quickly. Of course, Madam President, whatever Earth requires. Similar meetings took place with representatives from dozens of species. The Centauri Trade Union not only lifted their sanctions, but offered Earth-exclusive trading rights. The Andromedan Republic requested a non-aggression pact and offered to share advanced technology. Dr. Amanda Foster, who had helped design Earth's military buildup, now worked on establishing the new galactic order. She met with alien scientists and diplomats, helping them understand humanity's expectations. The rules are simple, she explained to a group of alien ambassadors. Respect human life and human rights. Honor our treaties and agreements. Do not mistake our emotions for weakness. One ambassador, a tall insectoid creature from the hive worlds, asked a question. Dr. Foster, how can we be certain that Earth will not use its military power to conquer other species? Dr. Foster smiled. Because we're not conquerors, we're protectors. Jake Morrison died because no one protected him. We built this military to ensure that never happens again. As long as you respect human life, you have nothing to fear from us. But the galaxy had learned that nothing to fear came with conditions. 3 months after the Zephyrian War, a small pirate group attacked a human merchant vessel near the Rigel system. They killed 2 crew members and stole the cargo. The pirates thought they could hide in the asteroid belt and avoid punishment. They were wrong. Captain Ryan Adams led the response mission with a single destroyer. He tracked the pirates to their base and destroyed it completely. When other pirate groups heard what happened, attacks on human ships stopped immediately. The message was clear. Human life was protected by the most powerful military force in the galaxy. As the first anniversary of Jake Morrison's death approached, humanity had become the dominant species in their region of space. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they had proven they would fight for each other with absolute determination. Marie Morrison stood at her husband's grave on a hill overlooking their small town. The headstone was simple, bearing only his name and the words, "Beloved husband and father." But surrounding the grave were flowers and gifts from people all over the galaxy who had never met Jake, but understood what his death meant. "You changed everything," Marie whispered to the headstone. "You brought all of humanity together. You made us strong." A gentle breeze stirred the flowers as if Jake Morrison himself was listening. President Rodriguez issued a statement on the anniversary of Jake's death. 1 year ago, we lost Jake Morrison to senseless violence. Today, His legacy protects every human in the galaxy. We are no longer asking for respect among the stars.